I'm going to paraphrase Ghostbusters here. He came, he saw, he got his ass kicked. Yes, indeed, John Walters, the drug czar from White House in Washington, D.C., came this afternoon to the Vancouver Board of Trade at the Wall Centre Luncheon, sponsored by the Vancouver Board of Trade. And he came with his usual prohibitionist message, somewhat watered down for a slightly different audience here in Canada. But we had a table of 8 there, Chris Bennett, David Mommelbean, Dana Larson, myself, and people from the compassion clubs in Victoria and Vancouver, and we booed, and we hissed, and we caught him in his lies, and we yelled out lies, propaganda, and we rattled him. The guy gave a terrible speech. I mean, not just terrible to us, but terrible to everybody. He was rattled, and he was distracted, and he was really disturbed that there was clear opposition to his kind of a White House Americanization of our drug policies. And he clearly laid out veiled threats, saying that Kurt Schmoke, who was the first harm reduction mayor in America, look at him, he left Baltimore a mess, a terrible place. Sort of like giving our new mayor, a fellow named Larry Campbell, who brings a lot of hope to the issues of drug addiction and marijuana legalization. I'll get to that in a second. But John Walters was here, and we harassed him. I got more coverage at this luncheon by the media than I got in the entire municipal election campaign. I did over 20 interviews with national, American, Canadian radio, television, and newspapers, covered our protest extensively of John Walters' visit. We were easily the most photographed and videotaped item going at this speech. And John Walters himself was pretty lame. I mean, but he came out with his usual medical marijuana lies and what a humane, compassionate place America is. Meanwhile, admitting that America's inner cities were a disaster, America's run amok with drugs, he said, America has many people in jail because America has most criminals. And, basically, by the time he was done, we realized in the audience, including not just us, but Canadians generally, realized that America has a lot of serious problems, and America is not the right place to learn from in regards to prohibition and the drug war. So we sent the drug czar packing. We hope you like our clips that we're going to show of the media coverage that our protest got of John Walters, the drug czar's speech here today in Vancouver on November 20th. And a note, the election's over. I didn't win, but I'll tell you this. 10 councillors were elected to City Hall, 9 of them new, all 10 favor legalizing marijuana. The new mayor, clearly in favor of legalizing marijuana, and probably has some fairly enlightened, for a mayor of a big city, ideas on drug abuse, drug addiction, and the problem of illegal drugs and prohibition. So I have high hopes for Vancouver's new mayor, Larry Campbell. It's going to be good for pot people. It's going to be good, I hope, having councillors who've said they favor legalizing marijuana. Now, we always know that sometimes translates a little differently. But the new city council, the new mayor, is going to be far more receptive to marijuana issues than the previous city council. So that's progress. That's moving ahead. And we sent the drug czar packing and embarrassed and kind of probably pissed off with us. So that worked out well too. Enjoy the clips. See you next week.
And I'm Gloria Makarenko. Get tough on drugs.
If you change policy to make there be more users, there's going to be more addiction.
The American hardline message for Vancouver.
And on the heels of an election that brought harm reduction and the city's open drug market to the forefront of people's minds, a visitor is in town here to speak about America's war on drugs. But as Melissa Fung reports, his message wasn't well received by Vancouver's current mayor or the mayor in waiting.
Even before his speech, his detractors were on the attack.
And this man, John Walters, is the man who hounded me to death in California. And he's trying to bring his drug war up here to Canada.
John Walters is America's drug czar. He made an appearance in Vancouver today to speak to the Board of Trade.
It's almost unbelievable the levels of HIV and hepatitis infection in subpopulations of Baltimore. And this is the place that pioneered needle exchange and other harm reduction policies funded by...
To speak out, many believe, against Vancouver's liberalizing drug policy, which runs counter to America's so-called war on drugs.
Of the 6 million people who could benefit from treatment and need it in the United States today, 60% are dependent on marijuana. Listen, I'll be happy to have them invite you if they want to, but, they invited me. I'm sorry.
I wasn't sure who invited him and why he came here yet again. He's been here before.
Both the mayor and the mayor-elect were in the audience. Both support the 4 pillars approach and the introduction of safe injection sites. And both had the same reaction.
I think it's really simplistic to say that the economy went in the tank because the mayor was progressive. I mean, we're going back to this whole thought that a needle exchange causes addiction. I mean, it's like flies causing garbage.
But I'm very familiar with Baltimore. They had masses of deaths with shared needles, and he tried to save lives and save the spread of disease by having a needle exchange, as is what's happened in a lot of American cities.
The drug czar says he's not trying to tell Canadians what to do.
If you change policy to make there be more users, there's going to be more addiction. There's going to be more of the consequences of addiction. It in some ways will unfortunately cause more casualties in Canada.
Still, the idea of having a safe injection site right across the border must be disconcerting for an administration that refuses to acknowledge harm reduction in a war on drugs with a budget of $20 billion. Melissa Fung, CBC News, Vancouver.
And Gloria is here. A fascinating story, an interesting debate, and we'll have more at 6:30.
Yes, we will on Cover Story. It's going to be a feature report that we're going to call The Politics of Prohibition. How the United States is fighting, and some say losing, the war on drugs, spending billions of dollars, devoting millions of hours of police time, and sending thousands of people to jail. America's war on drugs visited Vancouver today. John Walters is a member of George Bush's cabinet, responsible for America's drug policy. Critics charge it's a policy dominated by policing. Billions are spent enforcing drug laws. Thousands of people are charged and thrown into jail every year. As you heard in the news earlier, Walters, according to Vancouver's outgoing Mayor Philip Owen, is not welcome here. The war on drugs championed by Walters also faces fierce criticism inside the United States. Tonight on Cover Story, the politics of prohibition.
There is no way in which you can have a society totally free of drugs. So it's a question of how can you reduce the harm associated with drugs.
George Soros is one of America's richest men. He's also one of his nation's most generous philanthropists. The Wall Street guru has given away more money than any other living American, more than $2 billion. He has donated millions to campaigns to legalize marijuana, most recently to unsuccessful campaigns in 3 states earlier this month.
I have a very sort of an abstract philosophical idea of an open society based on the recognition that our understanding of the world in which we live is inherently imperfect. And because of our imperfect understanding, our actions have unintended consequences. And here is a case where we have a problem that actually defies a final and perfect solution, where our attempt to deal with it makes the problem worse than it would be otherwise.
Worse because critics of American drug policy say the war on drugs is, in a word, prohibition.
They took a social and medical problem and they made it a crime problem, and it's called prohibition. We had prohibition of alcohol from 1920 to 1933, and the same thing happened. Enormous corruption, violence, disrespect for law, and people still used alcohol. But we didn't learn from that.
We implemented alcohol prohibition in the first place because we had some great hope that somehow prohibiting alcohol would dramatically reduce or eliminate all of the evils associated with alcohol. And initially we had some success. But then a black market arose, and by the end of alcohol prohibition, there was more alcohol available than at the beginning, more alcohol problems available than at the beginning. But at the same time, we now had Al Capone and all the other organized criminals. We had billion-dollar black markets. We had violence. We had amazing corruption. We had shootouts in the cities, shootouts on the high seas. We had tens of millions of Americans identified as criminals because they were involved in this alcohol market. Well, it's all the same today. It's all the same today. You know, you look at this, was it a $400 billion global black market in drugs? The vast corruption not only in Latin America and Asia, but also in North America and Europe. You look at the 400,000 people incarcerated on drug law charges in the United States, an 8-fold increase since 1980. You look at the overdose deaths from adulterated drugs. You look at the criminalization of our youth for experimenting with marijuana. Those are all consequences not of drug use per se, but of drug prohibition.